Temple football is finally back from the bye and ready to hit the road again for a Thursday night showdown. I'm Sam Massad from the studio set where we'll look at a few key players during the matchup.
I think a lot of UCF fans might be overlooking this Temple defense for sure. I think it's one of the tougher ones they face.
Temple's defense got plenty of recognition from Jason Beatty of the Orlando Sentinel in this week's edition of Behind Enemy Lines.
Plus, we've got Temple's tools for success before a big Thursday night matchup with the UCF Knights. Inside the Nest is live and it starts right now.
Today's show with another former Temple head coach getting the pink slip, this time at the NFL level. The Carolina Panthers fired Matt Rule on Monday after starting the season 1-4. Rule coached the Owls from 2013 through 2016. He went 28-23 overall, including 2 10-win seasons, but he went just 11-27 in 2+ seasons with Carolina. With that, welcome into a new edition of Inside the Nest. She's Emilie Cochran, and I'm Luke Emilie.
The Owls had a part of an extra week to prepare for their second conference game, this one against UCF. But the Knights didn't have that extra week off. They spent last Wednesday knocking around the SMU Mustangs. This was the conference opener for both teams. Thanks to a strong second half, UCF pulled off its 4th win of the season. The team trailed 13-10 at halftime, but outscored the Mustangs 31-6 in the second half. Ryan O'Keefe found the end zone for the first time this season on a 26-yard pass from John Rice Plumlee. The 6-foot QB found O'Keefe one more time for his second touchdown of the game on a 58-yard shuffle pass. There he goes, scampering all the way down the left side of the field. The Knights win this one 41-19 and are now 4-1. Now I want to talk a little bit about this UCF quarterback, John Rice Plumlee. He's really good at recovering from his past performances. For example, after just throwing 49 yards in a game against Georgia Tech, he came back in this SMU game and threw for over 300 yards for the 3rd time this season. Now, 2 out of those 3 300-yarder performances, he actually only threw 150 yards in the games prior, less than 150 yards. So you can tell that he's really good at recovering from his poor performances, and he is looking to sustain that momentum heading further into conference play.
Now, Plumlee's a guy that's clearly trending in the right direction, and I want to flip it over to the Temple side. E.J. Warner, the true freshman, is trending in the wrong direction. We've seen him start 3 games this season, and in all 3, his turnovers have gone up, and his completion percentage has gone down. Now, he's had a lot of settling in to do. That's what Stan Drayton said during the bye week. He said he had to work out a lot of the timing with his receivers, get a lot of things right, but compared to Plumlee, E.J.'s turning in the wrong direction, trying to get in that right direction like Plumlee. And we'll get some great insight on Plumlee when Emilie and I bring in Jason Beatty of the Orlando Sentinel later in the show. Jason has been with the Sentinel for over a year covering the Knights. The 2020 UCF graduate has seen many different guys under center over his time at UCF. Jason will go in depth on the Knights starting QB, along with giving us the keys from a UCF perspective. But before we go behind enemy lines, Emilie and I are whipping out the toolbox to break things down from a Temple perspective.
Absolutely. It's time to decide what tools Temple needs to use for its second AAC matchup. Luke, you're up first.
My first tool is the Owls have to get the run game going. Temple is bottom 6 out of 131 FBS teams in rushing offense. Stan Drayton said there's been some miscommunication on the O-line of who to block because injuries have shuffled a lot of guys around. He also mentioned the running backs have missed some key holes, so overall the timing has to be fixed, and the bye week offered them the perfect chance to get healthy and figure out that timing.
Okay, tool number two is for Temple to sustain momentum in the second half. Statistically, the Knights are stronger later in the game, and this was magnified in their most recent matchup against SMU. UCF recorded 204 yards of offense in the 3rd quarter alone, passing for 148 and rushing for 56. The Owls defense will need to perform at an extremely high level if it wants to compete against a team with a strong receiving core and a quarterback who has already surpassed 300 yards passing 3 times this season.
My third tool is for the Owls to clean it up on 3rd down. Temple's bottom 5 in the country in 3rd down conversion percentage, converting on just 26%. On average, the Owls have had the ball for 7 minutes less per game than their opponents. An inability to convert on third down and continue these drives has forced the defense to spend extra time on the field. Even just a slight increase in conversions on third down would be crucial for both sides of the ball.
And lastly, I know it's easier said than done, but the Owls need to lock down these UCF receivers. Up until this past weekend, the Knights have relied heavily on their run game, but the team's receivers have really stepped up. Against SMU, Javon Carter caught a career-best 6 passes for 138 yards, and Ryan O'Keefe's 117 yards receiving was a season high. No doubt Temple's D will be ready to stop the run, but UCF has shown it can be efficient through the air. The Owls will try to put these tools to use against the Knights down at the Bounce House this Thursday night at 7 p.m.
Now, Emily and I looked at some key areas going into the UCF matchup, but Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massad is live at the studio set to take a look at some impact players this week. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Luke. We're starting a new segment here that I like to call Scouting with Sam, mainly because it also rhymes. This is where I'll dive into key players making a difference. Starting with the opposing side of the ball, the UCF Knights are off to a hot start, standing at 4-1. The offense, led by QB John Rice Plumlee, is dominating its opponents, but I'm looking at his go-to guy, junior receiver Javon Baker. The Alabama transfer currently leads the Knights with 395 yards, 2 touchdowns, and is averaging 79 yards per game. It's only Baker's first season with the Knights. However, he's one of the team's leading receivers, competing alongside veteran receiver Ryan O'Keefe. However, this high-scoring offense is going against one of the Americans' top-ranked defenses. For the Owls specifically, I'm looking at cornerback Jalen McMurray. The redshirt freshman has consistently proved himself this season, having 3 tackles and 3 pass breakups alone against Memphis, not to mention his notable performance against Rutgers, having 7 tackles and a forced fumble against another powerful offense. This receiver-cornerback matchup between these two single digits is definitely going to be a thriller to watch this Thursday night. Reporting from the studio set, I'm Sam Massad. Luke and Emily, back to you.
Thank you, Sam. Now, we've got a little appetizer of what the Knights bring to the table, but it's time to hear from Jason Beatty of the Orlando Sentinel to get the whole entree on UCF.
We get Jason's perspective on the team's passing game improvements and his overall game score prediction. Let's go behind enemy lines.
I think a lot of UCF fans might be overlooking Temple just because they think it's Temple, and UCF won last year 49-7 in Philadelphia. And I think when you're coming off of a game against SMU, where you held SMU to just 19 points, you heard so much about their high-powered offense with Tanner Mordecai and first-year coach Brett Lashley. You're thinking, okay, we're going to go into this Temple game and put up a bunch of points as well. But I think a lot of UCF fans might be overlooking this Temple defense for sure. I think it's one of the tougher ones they face.
So this UCF team has a great run game, but recently they've been making up for their passing game struggles from earlier in the season. Do you think the passing game will be sustainable or kind of continue to be inconsistent throughout conference play?
It's been a roller coaster of a season for John Rice Plumlee. You know, he only threw for 49 yards against Georgia Tech, comes back and throws for 300 more against SMU. This might be an opportunity, but until we see that, you know, it's a question that, you know, remains for UCF for sure.
Now moving over to the run game, UCF has one of the top rushing offenses in the country, top in the AAC, top 5 in the whole country. Would you attribute that success more to the guys running the ball or maybe the guys on the O-line?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I do think if I had to answer your question, probably the running backs, especially John Rice Plumlee, even though he's a quarterback, what he's done with his legs, you know, making defenders miss and taking some hits. So I think the running backs mixed in with John Rice Plumlee, they've had despite the offensive line struggling, although they've improved, the running backs, I think, get a little bit more credit so far in the run game.
What do you think the biggest strength and the biggest weakness is of this UCF team?
Their defense has been, you know, really hard to score on this year. UCF's defense in the fourth quarter and in the red zone specifically, one of the best red zone defenses. I think that's their biggest strength. The biggest weakness is the inconsistencies on offense that we talked about earlier.
And last question, do you have an overall game score prediction heading into this conference matchup?
I don't know, 35-14 or something like that. I'm not so sure if it's going to be a complete blowout. I do think the first half, just based on the inconsistencies we've seen, first half might be closer than people are expecting.
It was great to speak with a UCF expert, but it's time to put the focus back on Temple's head coach. Stan Drayton was free from the media last Monday, but with a bye week in the books, he's back to talk to our crew.
We'll hear from Coach Drayton on the matchup with UCF, along with how the team handled the bye week when Inside the Nest returns. Hello and welcome back to Inside the Nest. With the Owls back on the field this week, Stan Drayton was back on the second floor of Edgar Golson Hall for his weekly press conference.
In part one, Coach Drayton talks about what his offensive unit worked on with their few extra days, his quarterback in Warner, and UCF's quarterback in John Rise Plumlee.
Yeah, it's just some things we had to address. Number one, we had to, learn how to finish the style of defense that we're exposing on the first 3 quarters of most ball games, which is an aggressive style of play. But we got to learn how to finish in the fourth quarter, and we had to address some guys who are potentially backups that may not have been playing a lot of ball, that can get some of those guys a little bit of spell here and there during the course of the game, and be able to get those starters finishing the ball games. So that was one. And offensively, we really had to search for our identity. And it goes with who's available for us. We've been pretty beat up on offense in spots, and it's time for guys to step up. It's time for guys to elevate their level of play. Our quarterback had to get settled in into protection checks and managing the offense a little bit better that way. But it was good for us. Those guys took the right approach, had a great mindset about getting better, and I thought we addressed some of those things rather successfully during the bye week. Well, a lot goes into that, right? We got to protect them, number one. Our receivers have got to do a great job of running routes at depth, running routes full speed with good timing, and he's got to trust it, So freshman, he's a true freshman who's making some mistakes that, we still feel very confident about the ceiling that he has as a quarterback moving forward, and we've addressed everything that way. Fundamentally, he had some things he had to tighten up with regards to throw angles and arm angles and things of that sort, but I would say the most part would be just the timing of the throw. So Plumlee's the real deal. There's no question about it. He's tough. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say he played receiver a year ago. Is that the case? Yeah. So he knows what he's doing when the ball is in his hands, when it's time for him to run. And he's a tough nut. He's a tough football player. Not afraid of contact, delivers the blow, and manages the offense really well. So he's definitely a weapon for UCF that we have to account for every play. What we've done well on a consistent basis, that's hard to say. There's times where we've been able to get the ball to the wide receivers, and those guys make plays down the field, throw explosive plays down the field with, both Jose and Adonicus catching long touchdowns and explosive plays that way. I mean, we've done those things well. With the addition of DMR, he gives you a little bit of the mid-range pass game. What we would like to get better at is running the football. Those are the things that we are really locked and focused in on. And we need to find a way to get into a rhythm as an offense, and that's been our biggest challenge.
That was part one of Stan Drayton's presser. Em, what'd you take from it?
So Stan Drayton talked a lot about this UCF quarterback, John Rise Plumlee. He said that he's a tough nut, he's a strong competitor, and he's really good at not being afraid of a lot of contact. And in order to combat this, Temple's defense is really going to need to bring the pressure throughout all 4 quarters like they did in that game against Memphis. That's also something that Stan Drayton highlighted in his presser as well. As long as they do that, they should be able to compete against this UCF offense that's really strong overall.
That's a great point. Stan Drayton mentioned in his presser that the defense has been getting tired come the fourth quarter, and I think that represents more of the offense than the defense. I mentioned earlier the offense hasn't been able to convert and hasn't been able to get off the field. They've got to clean it up in the passing game to help out the defense. We know the running game is way behind, so if the passing game can improve, it'll help the defense get off the field. It'll help all parts of the game if the passing game can get cleaned up with E.J. Warner.
I agree.
So now we'll move on to part 2 of Coach Drayton's Weekly Talk, where he gives us an inside look at how the team handled the bye week and the idea of playing in front of a national audience.
We definitely had to balance it out with regards to, we have some commitments that are out there that we're playing on Friday nights and things of that sort. So We gave our coaches an opportunity to go out and recruit this past Friday. Prior to that, we had full practices going on out there. We worked on fundamentals, started off with this base fundamentals, not necessarily game planning. And then we did take advantage of some of the extra time that we have to prepare for UCF along the way. But primarily, it gave us an opportunity as a team to get healthier, right? I mean, you know, we had to really lock in to our players' bodies and making sure that they were getting back to a level where they can help us play and be productive on the field when their numbers call. So, you know, probably not unusual for what most programs would do, taking advantage of a bye week. But what was unusual about this one is you get a bye week and then you're playing on a Thursday night, right? So you get a little bit off schedule that way, but our players managed that well. Really looking forward to going down to Central Florida. We know the stage is going to be, you know, nicely set. Primetime TV, going against a really good opponent in UCF. Very talented football team, but we were able to address some things during the bye week. Most importantly, just trying to get some guys back healthy and available to play. But also an opportunity for us to do some soul searching and some self-scouting, and you know, attack some tendencies that we were putting, you know, on film for the first couple of games, and you know, really get back to fundamentals of playing good football, you know, from down to down. So again, our guys are really excited about this opportunity that we have coming up Thursday night. Again, we know that the atmosphere is going to be hostile, you know, but again, it's something that we're looking forward to see where we've grown within this last bye week. So we're excited to get going. Yeah, you know, we got to use Quincy to his advantage. I mean, he does have the ability to run the football, but he can throw the football too now. So I think it's just a matter of finding the right time to where we're not predictable. His presence of being that pass run threat gives you a certain style of defense that you see that we've got to learn how to exploit a little bit better as an offense. But
that was part 2 of Stan Drayton's presser. Luke, what did you take away from it?
The thing I liked the most in that part was Stan Drayton talking about the recruiting process and how the coaches are handling this bye week. Because you always forget there are so many focuses on the field, but this isn't Stan Drayton's team. Really, his guys are coming in the next couple years. So for Stan, the recruiting is such a big part of it. He mentioned there's still games this Friday night that him and the coaches want to go out and attend. So it's good to see that he's focusing on those guys. I've seen him talking to recruits after games at home this season. So it's a focus that's not unusual in college football, but it was cool to hear.
And we talked a lot about whether or not this bye week was coming at a good time last week. And Stan Drayton kind of clarified that and said that it actually came at a really beneficial time for the Owls, specifically because he mentioned in the presser that O-linemen were actually injured in this Memphis game. So they had a whole extra few days to kind of regroup, throw in some new guys in those positions. Also having that extra few days to reflect on what happened during that Memphis game and regroup and take it away for UCF this upcoming Thursday.
Now the Owls will try and take advantage of that break. We're up against our second break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some standouts for Temple through the first half of the season, all in the Hurry Up offense.
We go no huddle right after the break. Welcome back. We've gone behind enemy lines on UCF and locked in Temple's tools for success heading into Week 6.
Now it's time to go hurry up and answer some key questions on this week's edition of No Huddle.
All right, first question. Who has been the team's MVP so far this season?
For me, it's got to be Jordan McGee. We've raved about the D-line this season, and rightfully so, but McGee has been an underrated contributor on the second level of that Temple defense. The redshirt sophomore linebacker is second on the team in tackles, tackles for loss, and sacks, and he's done it all consistently. A sack in 3 different games and a tackle for loss in all 5.
Mine, I'm going with Leighton Jordan. He's an easy pick, especially because we haven't reached the midway season. We've highlighted Temple's defense a lot, and Jordan has really been standing out. So far this season, he has recorded 4.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and a pick 6 in the shutout win against UMass. Plus, the 6'2 linebacker has recently been named the Temple Athlete of the Month out of all the fall sports playing right now.
Now for question 2, let's go off the field. We saw head coach Matt Rhule get fired by the Carolina Panthers. Do you think he finds his next job in the NFL or in the college ranks?
So with things not working out in Carolina, I think it's best for Rhule to go back to coaching for college teams. Before the NFL, he was known for building up successful programs from the ground up. He excels at helping young players develop on the field, and although he didn't find any success in the NFL, I have no doubt he can hop right into a struggling college program and better it right away.
I agree. College is the perfect place for Rule. He took Temple from a 2-win team to a 10-win team in 2 years, and he took Baylor from a 1-win team to an 11-win team in 2 years. He could positively impact any college program.
Absolutely. Now, it wouldn't be no huddle if we didn't give our game predictions, so Luke, let's start with you.
I'm going with UCF 27-9. The Temple offense has become one-dimensional with the running game near the bottom of the country in yards per game. UCF's pass defense is good enough to shut down the Temple offense, hold the Owls under 10 points for the third time this season.
I'm with you. I'm going 42-13 UCF. The Knights are one of 3 undefeated teams in the AAC. The team has also showed that its defense can do more than just run the ball. We know Temple's defense can stop the run, but I'm not sure they can shut down these UCF receivers. Now let's bring in our reporters for their scores. Sam and Jake, what do you got?
I have a low scoring lead, but I still have the Knights coming up on top 7-7. UCF's offense not only has a strong run game, but also has now found the momentum of a strong pass game as well. The Owls, however, have proven they can stop powerful offenses, as shown against Memphis and Rutgers. But will it be enough? We'll likely see a repeat of what we saw against the Tigers. How about you, Jake?
I also have to go with UCF, 27-6. The Knights have one of the best offensive and defensive teams in the American. I expect the Owls' defense to hold up its end of the bargain, but I'm just not sold on this Temple offense yet.
It's another clean sweep in the studio, and we're coming up on our final break of the day.
When we come back, I'll be handing out my grades for Temple so far this season. Inside the Nest will be back in 90 seconds.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Before we wrap it up, ITN reporter Jake Gable joins us to bring back those good old report card days, and he's got some mid-season grades to hand out. Hey, Jake.
Hey, Emily. It's midterm time here at Temple, and the football team doesn't get an excused absence from this one. I'll start with the offense. They rank last in the conference in points per game and yards per game, scoring 15 points a game. Not exactly honor roll worthy. I'm giving the offense a D, although I could be convinced to give them an incomplete considering they have a new coach and a freshman quarterback. On to the defense, which has been a totally different story. The defense has gone from worst to first, ranked last in the AAC last year to first so far this season. I have to give the defense an A. They rank not only at the top of the conference in most defensive categories, but among the best in the nation as well. Finally, on to the coaching. 9 of the 11 coaches are in their first year at Temple. For such a new group, they have done pretty well. I'm giving the coaching staff a B. Considering this is almost a completely new coaching staff, going from having the 3rd worst point differential in the country last year to being competitive in nearly every game this season, with the lone exception being against Duke. What do you guys think of my report card?
Jake, I agree with you that the defense deserves an A and that the offense deserves a D, but I have to drop a grade level for the coaching staff. They get a C in my eyes. I get that the entire coaching staff is new, but with the Owls, they're only competitive on one side of the ball in that one conference game against Memphis. Plus, it might be too early to tell because we haven't even reached the midway point yet.
And I think you nailed it, Jake. I wish you were my professor. But that's enough grade talk. I mean, we've got enough problems with our own. So make sure to follow us along on Twitter at Owl Sports Update for live updates of the game in Florida this Thursday night.
For our entire crew, he's Luke Emilie. I'm Emilie Cochran. We'll see you guys next week and have a lovely weekend.